I'm Sam, that's Adam.
I'm Adam. Alright, let's get this train wreck rolling. A few points of order first of all. Firstly, if you came to the game show yesterday, we're sorry. Secondly, yes, crying. I'm feeling pretty sad at the moment because I actually had lots of pretty videos and things organised for a panel, but there was a freak power failure last night which caused a bunch of stuff to get corrupted, so I'm running off a build from last week. Thirdly, Starscream is sad because this isn't actually a Transformers panel. It's partly because, well, even though the original Transformers show was made by a Japanese animation studio, it had an American writing staff and American actors, and, well, I actually don't really like Transformers that much. There have actually been some purely Japanese-made, Japanese-written Transformers shows, particularly from the 90s, but we don't want to talk about them either because, well, we'll see once it actually starts playing. Do we have sound?
What?
Right. Zoom in sound. I don't have sound. Why did you turn off sound?
Simeon.
Not my sound.
This is Simeon, he's our technical guy.
Domo.
Don't applaud him, he's terrible. Well, yes. And now we never speak of that show again. So yeah, pause our screen. So let's start this train wreck rolling again. So, first of all, why am I doing a robot panel? Why aren't I doing something cool like a magical girl discussion panel or voice actors, let's fanboy over them and then stalk them panel? Well, reason number one is because I am at heart a sci-fi nerd before a Japanese animation nerd, and a lot of robot shows in Japanese animation tend to be sci-fi shows.
You'd make the point that, in fact, all robot shows are sci-fi to some
There's
extent.
like 2 or 3 fantasy ones.
Which are, okay...
Fantasy is
not having that discussion, okay.
Yeah, we're not going to do the science and magic discussion. Anyway, reason number 2 is because, well, even though robot shows have big robots in them, there's actually a pretty wide variety of shows of different tones and basically different genres. For example, you can get cool action ones, or you can have mopey pretty boy ones, or you can have extremely gritty, grim, dark discussions on war, made in the 80s.
Most of them are still going to be just buildings romans.
Yeah. Reason number 3 is because, well, big metal things punching other big metal things and sometimes buildings is cool.
Yes.
And so that way, there's lots of different robot shows and they all have different types of kinds and oh god, look at those monsters. So, it's pretty hard. Yeah, that is a horribly stretched image. But as you can see, there's lots of stuff. How do you go about categorizing all this nonsense? Well, the community sometimes get arguments about these sorts of things because, well, nerds like to argue about compartmentalizing things. So, like, there was once this company, they specialize in making really bad licensed games, but they happened to make one really good licensed game that was all about robots coming together and punching each other. They came up with the idea of, okay, we'll categorize them into 2 things. We'll class some as real robots and some as super robots. The basic idea being that real robots will be to denote anything which is particularly militaristic or high mobility class in this game, and anything which is more camp, a bit more silly, probably for kids, then we'll just class it as a super robot.
The other distinction is a real robot is a lot easier to sell a plastic model kit of,
yes,
whereas a super robot is a lot easier to sell a die-cast one.
So basically, sell lots of these to make money, sell about 5 of these to very rich nerds. So from there, however, the problem with this real and super distinction is that, well, there's lots of variety and lots of changing in ideas and things swap around, and it's really not a good method. Although, if you want to just classify things specifically from a technological standpoint, it's a bit more of a sliding scale. Where at the epitome of real robots, you'll have an actual real robot. And at the epitome of mind-breakingly insane and impossible, you get Doraemon. Because he's from the future and can do everything.
It's Japan's last line.
So yeah, basically you then have along there a sliding scale. So like we've got a scope dog from Votons, which are 4 meters tall and explode all the time. We have the Ingram from Pat Labor, which is a fairly down-to-earth production. We've got the Nightmare frames from the first season of GS, which are like scope dogs, but explode a bit less often. We've got our good friend the Gundam in the middle, because he's kind of from a sci-fi show, but he's also pretty darn silly. We then get GS Season 2 robots, where suddenly everything can fly and has unlimited lasers. We get our good friend Voltron again, who's a combining robot. We have a good friend Getarobo, who's a combining robot that makes no sense. It also is powered by manliness or something. Something involving green, but basically like green energy that makes lasers come from your stomach.
Spiral power!
There's also Tabletop around the gun there, but he's still not as powerful as Doraemon. And yet, Ava just wants to be a Godzilla and Mechazawa isn't a robot. Why did I put him on there? So let's talk about some shows, shall we? Let's start off with one that probably everyone here has seen, Code Geass. Have you all seen Code Geass? Yeah! Oh, you haven't? Well, let's talk about Code Geass. Code Geass is a very deep, philosophical... It's a story about, you know, a guy who got booted out from a royal family in an alternate future where America rules the world. Wait.
It's also about pizza.
Yeah, it's also a show about selling pizzas. It's a show about ridiculously flamboyant outfits. It's a show about ridiculously over-the-top, just overly dramatic dialogue everywhere. It's about doing crazy poses while doing speeches, while pretending you're a political show, but really you're just the director having some fun. Because The Director's a pretty fun show. If you haven't seen Code Geass, it's totally worth checking out, especially if someone else has a copy of the show. It's 50 episodes long. It's obvious the director stopped caring about being serious about 12 episodes in, around the time people start coming back to life. And I still really liked the show. It's silly, but it has cool ideas, and while not all of them get explored fully well, it's just really fun to watch. So from there, I guess we'll talk about another show everyone here's probably seen, Taken Topic Around the Gun. Yeah, that's from that episode with the really bad animation, so I guess I use a more appropriate picture.
That's not bad animation. That's just one split-second frame.
The episode was pretty poorly animated though.
Yeah, in general.
And it has pretty confusing artistic direction in relation to the rest of the show. Yeah, Around the Gun, something, you're underground, then you find a robot with drills, and you use your courage to save the world, then you discover that courage isn't very useful, but then you discover that courage is useful anyway, so you travel to another dimension with a giant drill ship that has drills, that combines with smaller robots to make a bigger drill robot, which makes a bigger drill robot that has drills, and you save the world and you get the girl, and then a highly controversial ending happens, and we all argue about it. Yep. Around the Gun. It's a pretty great show though. It's a show that's very much considered by robot fans to be one of those shows that you watch and think is amazing when you first start watching robot shows, then you watch other things and you like particular things about them a lot, and then you see all the kids who are all, man, I love Around the Gun, it's the best, manliest thing ever, and you think, it's not that great. But then you watch it like a year later and you go, nah, that's a really cool show still. So yeah, Around the Gun, it's a good show. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And that will lead us to some slightly older shows. I think we'll talk about this one next, because it's next on the slides. This is a show made in 2004. It was a remake of a 70s show that was actually pretty forgettable. It's sort of like the earlier episodes of Around the Gun, like the 7 to 14-ish area. You know, when it's just the people are going along in a ship, they've got a goal, which is some evil guys in a desert somewhere, and you just got to stroll along, have some cool episodes, have some memorable characters, have lots and lots of fights where you fight a monster of the week, use your strongest attack and it blows up and you're happy. It's unfortunately the show's not actually available here. It's available streaming on Hulu at the moment in America, and there's a Spanish DVD release though. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to legally discuss the legality of fan subs, but there are fan subs of the show. Yeah. So meet me in shady back alleys if you want copies of the show. Yeah, it's a show about a kid. His dad got killed in an accident a few years ago when he saw a giant robot kill his father. He's been trying to train up in the event that the giant monsters return. So he runs faster than the world's fastest person. He's stronger than the world's strongest person. And eventually the evil robots do come back to attack, and he tries to throw a harpoon at one of them. It actually kind of works, but then the robot punches him. But from there, he meets the crew of a mysterious ship, because it turns out the world is hollow, and inside the world is another world. And this world's being ruled by an evil empire that needs to be stopped by a rebellion. So he joins the rebellion, and they cruise along in a ship that has a big face and looks sort of like a dragon. And it turns out the face of the dragon ship is actually the middle of the robot. So they make a robot, and they go along, and there's some good character development, and there's lots of filler episodes, and some episodes were made by Gurren Lagann people, and lots weren't, and the animation's really inconsistent at parts. But if you just want to know, just watch a show where you just feel happy that some justice is being done, it's a good watch. Oh, and the villain halfway through the show starts being really competent, which is really cool to see. I mean, like, she starts listening to classical music while beating you up, and that's just hardcore, man. So what's next on the exciting list? Gundam Unicorn! Has anyone seen any of the episodes of Gundam Unicorn? Does anyone know anything about Gundam Unicorn who didn't put their hand up? Basically, it's the most recent direct-to-video production in the Gundam universe, which is a big, long, complex universe. So, to talk about Gundam and to understand why it's here and why it's so big, I guess we better rewind time back to the good old days. I love the original show so much.
It's great.
So, what's this Gundam all about? How do I find out about this Gundam? What do I watch this in? I've heard this gigantic list. Well, some people like to watch things in the order that they were produced in to get an idea of the flow and how directors have changed things over time. In which case, the order you should watch things in is Mobile Suit Gundam, Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta Gundam, Charles Counterattack, F91 Victory Gundam, 0080 More in the Pocket, 0083 Stardust Memory, the 8th MS Team, the 8th MS Team movie, probably Gundam Unicorn, then Mobile Fighter G Gundam, New Mobile Report Gundam, New Mobile Report Gundam, Endless Faults. Afterward Gundam X, Turn A Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam, Seed, Destiny, MSC Glue, MSC Glue 2, Gundam 00, Gundam 00 Season 2, Gundam 00 Awakening of the Trailblazer, Gundam Age, Gundam the Origin. Got that all? Nice. Alternatively, if you want to watch things in the order they take place in the timeline...
The first timeline.
Yeah.
Because noting that this is multiple universes.
There's multiple universes here. If you want to watch the original timeline and things, then the order is... Mobile Suit Gundam, the 8th MS Team, MSC Glue 2, 0080 War in the Pocket, 0083 Stardust Memory, Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta Gundam, Charles Counterattack, Unicorn, F91 Victory Gundam. What on earth does that mean? Well, basically, the original Gundam was a show made in 1979 by a bunch of people from Sunrise who wanted to start putting some more really serious and more actual hard sci-fi elements into shows. Because before then, it was lots of combining robots and lots of guys with very 70s hair, with the flick thing and the looking all cool and dashing. We wanted to have some characters with a bit more grit to them, a bit more whine, a bit more sheesh, why aren't we just getting out there and fixing the problem? So the original Gundam is a fairly landmark show. It was actually cancelled in its original airing because it wasn't selling enough toys. So a couple of years later, Bandai saw the show and thought, hey, die-cast toys doesn't work, but we reckon that the military crowd might like this show and might buy plastic kits they can build and paint on their own for this. So they sponsored a rerun of the show, and they sponsored a trilogy of compilation movies to summarise the show with better animation, a bit more consistency in the writing in a few scenes, and those are pretty good movies to watch. From there, people saw that it was successful, it started to become a boom, it basically started anime fandom in Japan. This is when like Star Trek style conventions started popping up for anime. And this was the time that they started sponsoring sequels, and they didn't stop. The original director hates sequels, and while he stood...
Okay, to be fair, Tomino hates everything.
Well, yeah, the original director is one of those really spiteful people. He just hates everything, especially women. Like, really especially women. I love the original show so much. And so we got a massive pile of sequels. Basically, everything along here, up to this, is a sequel or a side story. However, in about 1994, Bandai, the toy maker, bought over the production studio and said, alright then, we're just going to know there's all this continuity, there's all these kids who don't know the continuity, we want to sell toys to them, so Every year from now on, we're going to make a new show